The influence of COVID-19 on microplastic pollution. We are from EKC271 Biotechnology, University Sains, Malaysia. We'll discuss the influence of COVID-19 on microplastic pollution. What is microplastic? Microplastics pollution is a modern-day prevalent challenge that poses serious threats to the general well-being and sustainability of the planet. How important is protective equipment during the COVID-19 pandemic? Protective equipment is very crucial because the COVID-19 virus is transmitted between people through close contact and droplets. Importance of protective equipment can prevent person-to-person transmission of the coronavirus disease, can reduce the risk of infection largely, can reduce the potential transmission of asymptomatic people, and can control the release of virus-carrying droplets. Sources, occurrence and fate of protective equipment in the environment. Source of microplastic used by protective equipment. Most common source of microplastic used by protective equipment is polymer. For gowns, polyester, polypropylene and polyester cotton fabrics used as raw material. For medical masks, cotton, polyethylene, polyvinyl alcohol, polyacrylonitrile, polystyrene and polypropylene are used as raw material. For medical gloves, polyvinyl chloride, nitrile rubber, chloroprene rubber and latex rubber are used as raw material. For face shields and goggles, polycarbonate, polyethylene terephthalate, polypropylene, potassium acetate and polyvinyl chloride are used as raw materials. The demand of uses protective equipment increases in order to control the pandemic. Every month, frontline health responders around the world need over 89 million masks, 76 million gloves, 30 million gowns, 1.59 million goggles, and other protective equipment. In March 2020, the World Health Organization called on the industry to increase the manufacturing of protective equipment by 40% to meet rising global demand. From June to July 2020, the World Health Organization increased deliveries of protective equipment from 5.5 million to 50.4 million pieces, and over 200 million pieces of protective equipment were in store for emergency delivery. Until October 20, 2020, China has provided 17.9 billion masks and 1.73 billion protective clothing to 150 countries and 7 international organizations to meet the huge demand for protective equipment. Effects from microplastic during pandemic. It is estimated that 150 million metric tons of plastics are floating around in the marine environment today, and 13 million metric tons of plastic flow into the ocean every year. Effect on aquatic system. Due to the uses of protective equipment during COVID-19, the aquatic system has been impacted a lot. Firstly, is water pollution. The protective equipment is everywhere, and permanently in the ocean where it can affect the biodiversity there. 1% of plastic will stay on the surface of the ocean, and most of the protective equipment such as gloves and goggles will sink, because of the difference of density material. The low density of plastics will be floating on the surface of sea, whereas the high density of plastics will be sinking at the depth of sea. The microplastics of protective equipment can be transported through freshwater systems, such as lakes, rivers, and groundwater. Microplastics in freshwater ecosystems provide novel substrates which can take part in nutrient cycles, as well as serve as a vector for antibiotic-resistant genes and pathogens that can cause negative effects to ecosystems. In addition, as a result of COVID-19 protective equipment, harmful microbes and microorganisms will be able to grow, expand, and thrive, creating conditions that cause ocean acidification. Effect on atmosphere. Firstly, airborne microplastics, such as polypropylene and polyvinyl chloride, form white clouds, which reflect the heat of the sun and influence the climate. Secondly, it serves as vectors for the transport of bacteria and viruses in the aquatic and soil environment which harm human health. Not only that, landfills and incineration of protective equipment waste release harmful compounds, such as dioxins and furans, to pollute the air. Lastly, the production and incineration of plastic products release greenhouse gases, such as carbon dioxide, which cause global warming. Effect on soil. Firstly, is soil pollution. The wrongly disposed of protective equipment will degrade in the environment gradually and release microplastics to soil, which will be persistent in the environment for a very long time. The microplastics that were released contain toxic chemicals as an additive like phthalate, organotin, nonylphenol, polybrominated diphenyl ether, and triglycerin. Secondly, is global warming occur. The occurrence of plastic and plastic particles in the environment will contribute to a drought after global warming. This happens due to carbon emission by microplastic degradation to the atmosphere. Thirdly, is development and reproduction of fauna affected. The microplastic will affect the plant growth and even change the microbial community and enzyme activity because the distribution of microplastics significantly affects the community structure of soil microorganisms, which may also have an impact on the global carbon and nitrogen cycle. Fourthly, is reduced carbon biomass intake. The last effect of microplastic on soil is causing soil animals to produce false satiety. This effect will lead to reducing the carbon biomass intake, further leading to energy consumption, and ultimately resulting in reduced growth and even death of soil animals such as earthworm. Animals are also affected from the microplastic pollution due to the waste of COVID-19 protective equipment. Effects on animals. Protective equipment that's been disposed wrongly will lead to plastic pollution and poses a growing threat to animals by entrapment, entanglement and ingestion. Figure shows an entrapped perch, Perca fluviatilis, in a PP glove during a plastics spotter cleanup in the canals of Leiden in the Netherlands. This condition is called entrapment. Figure shows a nest of common woot, Fuligatra, partly built with a face mask and glove. It was found in West Denmark, Leiden on 6th of September 2020. This condition is called entanglement. Figure shows a species of juvenile Magellanic penguin, Spheniscus magellanicus, Sphenicide, associated with the ingestion of PFF2 protective equipment during the COVID-19 pandemic. This condition is called ingestion. Decomposition of protective equipment will form microplastic. Microplastic can cause hazard, bioaccumulation, growth and reproduction, and sublethal effects. By way of the food chain, microplastics can accumulate in organisms and cause adverse effects to the ecosystems. Effects on humans. Firstly, health issues occur. The protective equipment that was disposed wrongly could act as a vector for disease outbreak. This is because plastic particles are known to propagate microbes, such as invasive pathogens, and microplastics does surround us throughout our daily life, and human exposure can occur through inhalation, ingestion, and dermal absorption, due to their omnipresence in air, water, food, and consumer products, which is dangerous to our health. Next is that the plastic particles are also getting into food meant for human consumption. As we all know, fish is a vital origin of human protein, which is necessary for body growth, and contamination of fish by microplastic is a major hazard. After exposure to microplastic alone or in combination with other pollutants, fish may experience a variety of health issues. Humans may experience oxidative stress, cytotoxicity, neurotoxicity, immune system disruption, and transfer of microplastic to other tissues after being exposed to them. Secondly, disrupt normal hormone function. Microplastics also can act as endocrine disruptors, which will interfere with the normal hormone function and potentially cause weight gain. Research has shown the potentiality for metabolic disturbance, neurotoxicity, as well as carcinogenic effects. Thirdly, normal brain development in children affected. Microplastic can affect normal brain development in children. There are certain microplastics, for example, flame retardants, that are thought to interfere with fetal brain development. Recommendations and challenges in reducing microplastic pollution caused by COVID-19. There are also some recommendations and challenges in reducing microplastic pollution caused by COVID-19. Plastic items mostly based on polymers, such as PA, PP and PET, are derived from non-renewable fossil fuel resources and present low degradability in open environments. Thus, we can make some improvements by introducing bio-based plastic, which is degradable plastic that decreases carbon footprint and increases recycling targets, such as home composting and waste management efficiency. However, the transition from fuel-based to biodiesel plastics must be considered after overcoming the current production limitations and lack of scientific support towards the environmental safety of the greener solution. This figure shows the end-of-life options for bioplastics. It is important to identify microplastics pollution in order to observe and understand the sources of COVID-19 protective equipment wastes and their interaction with the environment and ecosystems, and also build a global protective equipment waste cycle model to evaluate microplastic pollution. This can be done by using precision analytical tools and standardized methods in order to separate sampling, classification, quantification, quality control, and characterization of microplastics. During pandemic, all medical waste and PPE should be carefully monitored by specialized personnel to guarantee health safety. The use of UVC light, ozone gas, and ionized hydrogen peroxide seem to be valid decontamination approaches to apply to PPE and N95 masks, improving their reusability and reducing the production of waste. However, recycling technologies of non-woven textiles from which most PPE is made is still very limited due to the lack of technology and their composition. Waste management is really important during a pandemic because of increased danger of disease transmission and increased domestic waste generation. Thus, it should be mandatory and reinforce the use of PPE for workers related to waste management. Therefore, municipalities responsible for waste collection and treatment should create guidelines and procedures to apply during pandemics regarding waste reduction recommendations. It is imperative to rethink our attitudes towards plastic usage by promoting sustainable behaviors. We can practice using a usable bag for shopping, use paper bags or cardboard boxes for business, and use hand sanitizer instead of plastic gloves for hand hygiene instead for health workers. Lastly, we can improve bio-based plastic production since bio-based plastics are made from polymers derived from biological sources, including higher plants, microalgae, and cyanobacteria, which shift the dependency from fossil fuels to bioproducts. This is because bio-based plastics have easier biodegradation, better renewability, and lower global warming impact, which promote bioplastic-based protective equipment innovation and circular economic development.